What if everything we know about human history, is just the surface of something far deeper? Picture this. You stand at the edge of a vast desert. Wind whips across endless dunes. Beneath your feet layers of forgotten time. Not decades, not centuries, but hundreds of thousands, even millions of years. Buried under mountains, oceans, ice sheets, are ruins that no textbook has ever mentioned. Silent cities, carved from crystal, towers swallowed by vines before the dinosaurs vanished. Machines rusting beneath stone, their blueprints lost to time itself. Sounds impossible, maybe, but then so did Troy, before it was discovered. So did the Amazonian cities hidden under dense forest canopy. So did Göbekli Tepe, a temple, 6,000 years older than the pyramids. Built when humans were supposedly just hunters and gatherers. But what if there was more? Much more. What if Earth had once cradled not just one, but many intelligent civilizations long before us? Civilizations with technology, language, beliefs, wars, and dreams just like ours. Civilizations wiped out not by human hands, but by time, cataclysm, and silence. Entire eras lost, overwritten, and forgotten in the deep geologic memory of this planet. Could they have walked on land we now call ocean floor? Could they have charted the stars with instruments we haven't yet rediscovered? Could they have fallen? Many believe we are the first intelligent civilization Earth has ever seen. That from the mud and the caves, we rose slowly and painfully to become what we are now. But that belief has one great weakness. It assumes that nothing came before. It assumes that the entire world waited silently for us to arrive, and that the past was empty of minds like ours. But Earth was never empty. It was never silent. Every mountain we climb, every desert we cross, every ocean we sail, they all hold secrets older than memory. Beneath layers of rock lie millions of years of history. Some of it is fossilized, some of it is shattered, some of it is gone forever. But what if some of it was hidden? Not by nature, but by time itself. Imagine a civilization that rose 1,000,000 years ago, one that mastered the land and the stars, one that built not with steel and concrete, but with materials we can no longer even recognize. Over time, their buildings would collapse. Their books would burn or turn to dust. Their machines would rust away, buried beneath storms, floods, and earthquakes. And if a comet came, or a supervolcano or a global flood, everything would vanish. Not just buildings, but memory itself. Stories would be lost. Names would be lost. It would be as if they never existed. And now imagine that thousands of years later, we rise, just like they once did. We build, we grow. We look to the stars, and we tell ourselves we are the first. But maybe we're not. Maybe we're just the latest in a long-forgotten cycle. Scientists dig up bones of ancient creatures that lived hundreds of millions of years ago. Dinosaurs, fish, insects, even strange things that have no name. But when it comes to evidence of intelligent civilizations, the Earth is quiet. It gives us no easy answers. And maybe that's because it erases evidence so completely. Modern human cities, our skyscrapers, our highways, our metal and glass, they may not survive even 10,000 years without maintenance. Rain, wind, earthquakes, vegetation, nature reclaims everything. Imagine what would remain of us in 100,000 years, or 1,000,000, or 10,000,000, almost nothing. And so the question grows louder. If an advanced civilization had existed millions of years ago, would we even know it? Would we find their ruins? Or would time have crushed them back into dust? Sometimes we do find strange things buried in ancient rock, or trapped in coal. Footprints fossilized beside dinosaurs, metal objects found in stone that's supposedly millions of years old, carvings and symbols that don't match any known culture. Most of the time, experts say it's a mistake, a coincidence, a hoax. But what if it's not? What if these are tiny whispers of a story we're too afraid to listen to? We've created a timeline of history, a map of everything we think happened. But our map is small. It's missing almost everything. Because it only begins when we started writing. It only begins after the Great Silence. The silence that may have followed something, or someone. The truth is, we've barely scratched the surface. Literally. The deepest we've ever dug into Earth's crust is the Kola super-deep borehole in Russia, only about 7.5 miles down. And yet, Earth's crust is over 25 miles thick. Below that is mantle, then the core. We know more about the surface of the moon than we do about the deep Earth, which means we don't know what's buried deep beneath our feet. Imagine if beneath the deserts of Africa, or under the oceans, or inside frozen Antarctica, there are cities, machines, monuments hidden and preserved, waiting for someone to find them. It's not just science fiction. It's a possibility no one dares to speak loudly, because if we accept the idea that Earth may have had previous civilizations, we also have to accept that they vanished. That all their knowledge, their power, their dreams were lost, and that we could vanish too. That's terrifying, but it's also humbling. We are not invincible. We are not eternal. And maybe if, we're willing to listen to the silence of deep time, we might hear echoes of those who came before. Not in words, not in books, but in patterns, myths, ruins, and stars. In mysteries we cannot solve. In questions we're too proud to ask. There is more to Earth than we see. more to history than we read, and more to us than we understand. So before we move forward into the future, maybe we should turn back and look deeper into the past, because the missing time may not be empty. It may be full of answers we're not yet ready to find. Some truths are too big to see until they are gone. We like to believe that life moves forward in a straight line, that from the past to the present to the future, we grow smarter, stronger, better. But what if that line is not straight? What if it's a circle? What if everything we've built has been built before? The Earth is not just a home, it is a survivor. It has endured unimaginable pain. Over the course of billions of years, it has been shaken, burned, frozen, flooded, and ripped apart. And every time life came back, but not always the same. We know this from science. We know there were mass extinctions, 5 major ones. Each time, most of life on Earth vanished. The causes were different asteroids, supervolcanoes, poisoned air, rising seas, but the result was the same. A clean slate, a reset. And every reset brought something new. First, simple cells, then plants, then dinosaurs, then mammals, then us. But here's the question no one wants to ask. What if we're not the first? What if something intelligent lived during one of those earlier times and was wiped away? Imagine a world full of towering cities, glowing lights, flying machines, music in the air. Not like ours. Different, maybe cleaner, maybe more connected to nature. Maybe they had no phones, no computers. But they had something. And then, one day, without warning, everything changed. A comet streaks across the sky. Bright, beautiful, and deadly. Within hours, it hits the ocean. The heat is like the sun. The waves rise higher than mountains. Ash fills the sky. The earth becomes dark, cold, and silent. Or maybe it wasn't a comet. Maybe it was a pole shift. The magnetic field of the earth changes direction. Slowly at first, then rapidly. The planet's balance is thrown off. Weather spirals into chaos. Continents shake. Volcanoes roar to life. Species vanish. Civilizations fall, or a volcano, like the one sleeping beneath Yellowstone. If it erupts, it could cover continents in ash, block the sun, poison the rain, and kill millions, perhaps billions. And then, there's the floods. Not one, not two, but countless stories from every ancient culture describe a time when the world drowned. Water rose fast and unforgiving. Whole cities disappeared under waves. Mountains became islands. Survivors clung to what they could, watching everything they knew vanish into the deep. These are not just myths. They are memories passed down through generations, disguised as stories. The Bible speaks of Noah's Ark. The Sumerians told of Utnapishtim. The Hindus tell of Manu, the first man who was saved from the great flood by a divine fish. The Greeks spoke of Deucalion, who survived a flood sent by Zeus. The Native Americans, the Chinese, the Aboriginal Australians, they all remember a flood. How could so many cultures, separated by oceans and time, all tell the same story? Perhaps, because it happened. And perhaps, before the flood, there were people like us. Or maybe not like us. Maybe more advanced. Maybe more in tune with the planet. Maybe they saw it coming. Maybe they didn't. But when the waters came, it didn't matter. Their cities were swallowed. Their names were lost. Their voices went silent. And when the waters receded, only the survivors remained. Scattered, scared, holding on to what little knowledge they could. Over time, their stories turned to legends. Their science became magic. Their machines became myths. The world had been reset. This is the heart of the Great Reset theory, that Earth is not only a place of creation, but also of destruction. That over and over again, civilizations may rise and fall, buried not by time alone, but by fire, ice, and water. We are told that history is a straight line, but what if it's more like a spiral? A pattern repeating across the ages, each time rising higher, but always passing through darkness again. Right now, we stand at the top of the spiral. We have satellites, skyscrapers, AI, and science that can see into the heart of atoms. We believe we are safe, that nothing can destroy us, that the past is behind us and the future is ours. But Earth has no memory. It does not protect. It does not care. To the Earth, we are not special. We are just temporary. It has wiped itself clean before. It can do so again. And we would leave almost no trace. Our tallest buildings would crumble in a few centuries. Our roads would crack. Our dams would break. Our satellites would fall from the sky. Our great libraries would burn or rot. In just a few thousand years, nature would take it all back. Forests would grow over cities. Animals would walk through empty malls. Rivers would carve through once bustling towns. And in a million years, there would be no sign we ever existed, except maybe just maybe a few strange objects buried deep in the soil. A plastic bottle turned to stone. A spark plug fused into a rock. A city shadow detected by radar beneath the desert. And someone, far in the future, might find it. And they'd wonder, were we the first? Or just another forgotten chapter? Just like we're wondering now. This is not just theory. It's a warning. Because if the Earth resets itself, if nature decides it's time for another cleansing, we may not be ready. We may not survive. We live in a fragile world wrapped in a false sense of security. But volcanoes are still sleeping. Comets still roam the solar system. The climate is changing, the oceans are rising, and our technology, while powerful, cannot stop the forces of nature. We may think we have time, but so did those before us, and just like them, we may be swallowed, erased, and turned into myth. That is why the Great Reset theory is not just about the past, it's about our future. It asks us to look at ourselves not with pride, but with humility, to understand that everything we know can be taken away, that memory can be lost, that civilizations are not forever. But maybe, just maybe, if we learn from those who came before, if we listen to the stories hidden in the silence, if we treat the earth not as a machine to be used, but as a being to be respected, then perhaps we won't be erased, perhaps we will endure, and maybe, this time, the cycle will break. Sometimes, the truth is not buried underground. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, ink on paper, rolled up, fragile with age, and full of secrets the modern world cannot explain. In the year 1513, an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis drew a map. It was handcrafted on a piece of gazelle skin, created with care, detail, and strange precision. For a long time, it was just another old map in a dusty archive until historians looked closer. What they saw left them speechless. Because this map showed something impossible. It outlined the coast of Antarctica, but not as we know it today, buried under ice. Instead, the map revealed a detailed and accurate depiction of Antarctica's coastline, as it would appear without ice. But that's not all. The last time the continent was ice-free was at least 6,000 years ago, long before our current civilization began. And yet, here it was, perfectly drawn in the 16th century. How could a man from 1513 have knowledge of a land no one had seen, using tools that shouldn't have existed? Piri Reis himself gave us a clue. He said his map was not entirely his own creation. He had drawn it using older source maps, many of which were already ancient and mysterious by his time. He mentioned Greek, Arab, and even older sources that had somehow known the world in ways that defy our understanding. That's when the real mystery began, because Piri Reis wasn't alone. Other ancient maps, too, seemed to show things that should be impossible. The Orontius Phineas map of 1531 also shows Antarctica's mountains and rivers with no ice. The Boischet map, drawn in the 1700s, reveals under-ice geography that was only confirmed by modern sonar scans in the 20th century. These are not just mistakes. These are frighteningly accurate. Some even show coastlines of South America and Africa that are more precise than maps made centuries later. Some show latitude and longitude, a method of measurement that requires advanced math, complex instruments, and a deep understanding of the Earth's curvature. And yet, these ancient cartographers had it. Long before GPS, long before satellites, long before we believed such things were possible. So who made the original maps? The answer hides between fear and curiosity. Most historians don't want to look. They say, it's a coincidence, or it's just guesswork. But guesswork doesn't explain how the exact shape of Antarctica's hidden coast was known thousands of years before it was discovered. Guesswork doesn't create maps that align with modern scans and data. Guesswork doesn't survive the cold touch of truth. The more we look, the clearer it becomes. Someone had already explored the world long before us. But who were they? Some believe these maps are the surviving fragments of an ancient global civilization, one that had the power to sail across oceans, study the stars, and measure the Earth with terrifying precision. A civilization that lived during a time when the poles weren't frozen, and the sea levels were different. A civilization that charted the planet not for war or conquest, but out of curiosity, out of wonder. And then, they disappeared. Was it a flood? A comet? A slow collapse over centuries? No one knows. But what we do know is that their knowledge somehow survived in scrolls, in carvings, in whispers passed down from teacher to student, from culture to culture, until one day, a man named Piri Reis took that ancient wisdom and made it into a map. And now, we are left with a terrifying thought. If their maps survived, what else might still be hidden? Were there books? Machines? Star charts? Could we have already lost the key to understanding our own past because we are too afraid to admit that we are not the first? Imagine walking into an ancient cave and seeing, etched into stone, the continents just as they are now, perfectly shaped, accurately placed. You'd ask yourself, who drew this? Because it couldn't have been people who didn't even know the world was round. But maybe they did. Maybe the world has been explored and forgotten again and again. And maybe each time the survivors lose more of the truth, they tell stories instead, of sky gods and sunboats, of great floods and lost lands, of people who could fly, or move mountains, or talk to the stars. We call these stories myths. But maybe they are memories, distant echoes of a time when the Earth was already known. What if Antarctica wasn't always covered in ice? What if it once held ports, cities, farms, and people? And when the climate changed, when the axis of the Earth tilted, or the poles shifted, it was all lost beneath snow and silence. A whole chapter of history, frozen into white stillness, until one day, someone would look at an old piece of parchment and realize, we've been here before. There are those who say these maps were just accidents, that early explorers made guesses and got lucky. But luck doesn't explain accuracy that matches modern satellite data. Luck doesn't explain longitude calculations that require a clock more accurate than any they had. Luck doesn't explain repeat appearances of the same coastlines, mountains, and features drawn by different people in different centuries, across different continents. There's something deeper here. A message carved into time, and maybe a warning. Because if there was once a global civilization, before Uswan, that mapped the world and studied the skies then, something must have ended them. Something powerful enough to wipe out knowledge, break cultures, and reset history. And now we sit in their place. We sail across oceans, we launch satellites, we map the Earth with precision they would recognize. And yet, we don't know who they were. We've built a world on the belief that we are the first, the beginning, the pinnacle of human progress. But what if we are just the latest map makers, adding our layer to a planet already drawn and forgotten? What if the truth is right in front of us, in the faded lines of old parchment, in the curves of ancient coastlines, in the names and legends we've ignored? The Piri Reis map is not just a piece of history. It is a doorway, a challenge, a whisper from a lost world that says, we were here, we knew, and now it's your turn to remember. Some monuments make you stop and stare. Others make you wonder. But just a few make you question everything you've ever believed about history, humanity, and time. Across the world, in the most unexpected places, there stand structures so massive, so complex, and so ancient, that they do not just challenge science, they break it. We are told our ancestors were primitive. They hunted, they gathered, they lived in caves or simple huts. We are taught that writing came before religion, and farming came before temples. But the stones disagree. They whisper of a different story, a story so old, it has been buried, not by sand, but by fear. Let's begin in Baalbek, Lebanon. Today, it's just a small town, but hidden within its quiet hills is one of the greatest engineering mysteries of all time. In the heart of Baalbek lies a ruined temple complex, built over thousands of years. But it's not the columns or the carvings that puzzle experts. It's the foundation, because deep beneath the temple are 3 gigantic stones, each weighing more than 800 tons. And nearby, there's another one, left unfinished, estimated at over 1,000 tons. These are not just heavy, they are impossible by today's standards. To understand their size, one of those stones weighs more than 3 fully loaded Boeing 747 airplanes. No modern crane on Earth can move them with ease. And yet, someone in the ancient past did. Not only did they move these stones, they cut them perfectly, aligned them with insane precision, and stacked them together as if they were blocks in a child's game. The official story says the Romans built on this site. But even Roman records don't claim to have moved those giant stones. They only built on top of what was already there. So, who placed them, when, and with what technology? No one knows. And that silence is louder than any answer. Now travel with me to the bottom of the sea. Off the coast of Japan, near the island of Yonaguni, divers made a shocking discovery in 1986. At a depth of about 25 meters lies a massive underwater structure, carved steps, flat surfaces, sharp corners, and what appears to be a staircase rising out of the seabed. It has become known as the Yonaguni Monument, and it looks like a sunken city frozen in time. Some say it's a natural formation shaped by waves in time. But others, divers, geologists, and explorers, disagree. They see tool marks, platforms, and even what looks like carvings of faces. If it is man-made, then it must have been built over 10,000 years ago, back when that area was still above sea level. But that doesn't fit our timeline. According to mainstream history, 10,000 years ago, humans were still just learning how to plant seeds. They didn't have tools, didn't carve stone, didn't even build permanent homes. But Yonaguni says otherwise. It says someone had knowledge, skill, and vision far beyond their time. And when the seas rose, whether slowly or suddenly, it was lost beneath the waves, a forgotten city, a forgotten people, a forgotten truth. Now let's move from the sea to the desert. In the dusty plains of Turkey, a farmer digging in his field in 1994 made a discovery that would change history books forever. What he uncovered was Göbekli Tepe, now considered the oldest known temple on Earth. Archaeologists began digging, expecting to find a small village. What they found instead was a vast complex of carved stone pillars, some over 20 feet tall, arranged in perfect circles. The stones were covered in animals, symbols, and strange humanoid shapes. Carbon dating revealed something that shook the world. Göbekli Tepe is over 11,000 years old. That's 6,000 years older than the Great Pyramid of Giza. Thousands of years before the wheel, before writing, before agriculture. And yet, somehow, these ancient people built a temple. But how? These pillars are massive. They would require planning, teamwork, advanced tools, and a deep understanding of astronomy and architecture. They were placed with care, aligned with the stars. Some even suggest that the site was used for rituals, ceremonies, and possibly a form of science we no longer understand. And here's the strangest part. Once it was finished, they buried it, covered it with earth, as if trying to protect it, or hide it. Why? Was it a sacred place that had to be preserved, or were they afraid of something? Did they know something we don't? These are not isolated mysteries. They are part of a global pattern. In Egypt, we see temples aligned with constellations. In Peru, stone walls fit together so tightly that not even a blade of grass can pass between them. In Easter Island, enormous statues were carved and moved by unknown means. Again and again, we find structures that do not match the people we're told built them. The stones are too big, the cuts are too precise, the locations are too aligned with the stars. It's as if some invisible hand once guided humanity, taught them, helped them, inspired them, and then vanished. Some say it was aliens, others say it was survivors of an older, forgotten civilization that passed on their knowledge to those who came after the great floods. Whoever they were, they left their fingerprints in stone. But why don't we talk about this? Why do history books ignore it? Because these structures don't fit the timeline. They don't match the story we've told ourselves. A story of slow progress, of evolution from ignorance to knowledge. But what if that story is wrong? What if the truth is, we knew more once? What if we are remembering, not discovering? What if civilization doesn't move in a straight line but rises and falls, over and over, like the tide? And now, we are in another age of rising. We have machines, technology, science, but will it last? Will our skyscrapers stand 10,000 years from now? Will our cities survive the next flood, the next quake, the next fire? Or will they fall, as others have? And when they do, will future humans look at our ruins and wonder, how did they do it? Will they walk through the skeletons of our towers and ask, was this natural or man-made? Just as we ask today about Baalbek Yanaguni, Göbekli Tepe, these places are not mistakes. They are messages, written in stone, preserved in silence, left behind not to confuse us but to awaken us, to remind us that we are not the first, that the earth is old, and that its memory is deeper than our imagination. Sometimes, it's not the ancient temples or mysterious maps that shake your beliefs. Sometimes, it's the small things, the things you can hold in your hand, a piece of metal, a spark of electricity, a tiny gear sealed in stone, objects so simple, yet so impossible, they forced you to ask, who made this? These are called Upartsau Place artifacts. They're objects found in places they simply should not be. Tools, machines, or pieces of technology buried deep underground, inside rock layers that are millions of years old. Strata that existed long before modern humans, before cities, before writing, before even the idea of civilization. And yet, the objects are there, waiting, daring us to explain them. Take the Baghdad battery, for example. Discovered in Iraq, it looks like an ordinary clay jar until you look inside. It contains a copper cylinder and an iron rod, all sealed with bitumen. When researchers tested it, they found that this simple jar could generate a small electric charge. In other words, it works as a battery. But here's the mystery. It's believed to be over 2,000 years old. We were taught that electricity wasn't discovered until the 1800s. So how could people in the ancient world have built a working battery? What did they use it for? Electroplating medicine? Rituals? And more importantly, who taught them how to do it? Now let's move to China, where workers once broke open a 2,500-year-old tomb, and inside, they found something strange. Among the relics of that ancient burial was an object shaped like a small modern belt buckle. But when scientists examined it closely, they found it was made of a metal alloy unknown in that region and time. It had a perfect geometric design, too advanced for its age. No one could explain it. Some said it was decoration. Others whispered that it looked like a part of a machine. And then, it was forgotten. Many of these artifacts are pushed aside, dismissed, hidden in museum basements, or labeled as unusual without further study. Because if they are real, they rewrite everything. In 1901, off the coast of Greece, divers discovered something deep underwater near the island of Antarctica. At first, it seemed like a pile of corroded metal, but over time, and with new technology, it was revealed to be a mechanical device, a complex system of gears and dials, now known as the Antikythera mechanism. This ancient machine could predict astronomical positions, eclipses, and even the cycles of the moon. It's often called the world's first computer. It is believed to be over 2,000 years old. But machines like this weren't supposed to exist until the 1600s or later. Some of the gearwork is so precise that it rivals modern craftsmanship. So again, the question burns: who made this, and how did that knowledge vanish for over 1,000 years? Now, let's go deeper. Literally. In Russia, miners have found tiny spiral-shaped metal objects buried up to 300,000 years deep in the earth. They are microscopic, too small to be made by hand. Some are made of tungsten, a metal that requires extremely high temperatures to work with. According to science, humans weren't even around 300,000 years ago, not in the form we are today. So who dropped these objects? What were they used for? Are they debris from an old technology or something else entirely? In Romania, a hammer was found encased in solid rock. The rock itself was dated to be over 400 million years old. Yes, million. The hammer had a metal head made of iron, so pure, modern technology would struggle to replicate it without advanced processes. Was it misdated, or is it evidence of a civilization so old it is not even part of the human timeline? Sometimes these artifacts appear in coal, stone, or even fossils. A metal sphere with perfect grooves was found in South Africa, from a rock formation over 2.8 billion years old. It was not broken, not natural, just sitting there, like it had always belonged. The scientists who found it couldn't explain it. They still can't. Again and again, these objects appear like ghosts. Out of time, out of place, but never out of meaning. Each one is a quiet scream. A crack in the story we've built around ourselves. A question that refuses to go away. Are they just mistakes? Misidentified tools? Clever hoaxes? Some might be, but not all of them. There are too many. Found too deep, made too well. Even if only one is real, just one, it's enough to change our entire understanding of history, because it would mean we are not the beginning. It would mean someone else came before us. Someone smart, someone skilled, someone we've forgotten. Some call them the first people. Some believe they were wiped out by catastrophe. Others say they left, took their knowledge elsewhere or underground. And some believe they are not entirely gone at all. But whoever they were, they left clues. Not in pyramids, not in scrolls, but in the things they dropped, the things they used, the things they made, and now we dig them up, piece by piece, trying to put together a puzzle we don't even know we're solving. Why don't we hear about these things in school? Because they're uncomfortable. They don't fit the neat boxes of history. They suggest a past that is messy, strange, and older than anything we're prepared to accept. And because if we admit these objects are real, we must also admit we are not as advanced as we think. That maybe our modern age is just another chapter in a book we didn't start. That maybe we re-walking in the footsteps of giants while thinking we re the only ones who ever lived. Out-of-place artifacts are not just mysteries. They are reminders. That truth is not always where we expect it. That time is not as straight as we believe. And that the earth may have known many civilizations, each one buried a little deeper than the last. We are told to forget them, to laugh, to move on, but they are still there in stone. In silence, waiting. We often treat ancient texts like bedtime stories, simple myths made by people who didn't understand the world. But what if they weren't guessing? What if they were remembering? All across the world, in forgotten scrolls, sacred scriptures, and carved tablets. There are stories detailed, strange, and often far too advanced for their time. These aren't vague tales. They describe machines, stars, technology, and beings that should not exist in those ancient times. We call them myths, but maybe they are memories of something real. Let's begin in India, with texts older than most of recorded history, the Vedas. These ancient Hindu scriptures speak of flying machines called Vimanas, but they're not just described as things that flew in the sky. The texts go into deep detail describing shapes, materials, engines, fuel sources, and even aerial battles. One passage from the Mahabharata describes a Vimana rising up with a loud roar and a pillar of fire. Another text, the Semarangana Sutradhara, speaks of Vimanas made of light metals, with mercury engines that produce power and could move in any direction. How could people thousands of years ago describe such things? Some say it was imagination. But why would they imagine machines powered by mercury, or flying ships with precise controls, when no such thing existed in their visible world? Unless they weren't imagining at all. Let's go even further back to ancient Sumer, the first known civilization on Earth. Thousands of years before the Bible was written, the Sumerians carved their knowledge into clay tablets. They wrote of the Anunnaki beings from the sky who came down to Earth, shaped humanity, and gave them knowledge. These beings were described not as gods in flowing robes, but as powerful entities who flew in sky chariots, taught astronomy, agriculture, and engineering, and even ruled over humans. The Sumerians also mapped the solar system, including planets not visible without a telescope. They wrote of Uranus and Neptune, and even depicted Pluto, long before modern science officially discovered them. How could they know? How could they write about things that even we didn't fully understand until the 20th century? Some historians brush it off. Coincidence, they say. A lucky guess? But coincidence doesn't carve entire star maps into stone, and a lucky guess doesn't explain Egypt. In the Temple of Dendera, hidden deep in the carvings of ancient Egypt, there are shapes that look disturbingly modern. One carving shows what appears to be a light bulb, complete with a socket, filament, and even wires. It's held in the hands of priests and connected to what resembles a power source. It's called the Dendera light. Traditional scholars say it's just a symbol, a snake inside a lotus flower. But many engineers and researchers disagree. Some have even recreated it, shown that with the right materials, the device could emit light. Could the ancient Egyptians have had electrical technology thousands of years ago? There are no records of batteries, no wires, found, yet this image remains clear, powerful, unexplained. What else have we ignored? In Mayan mythology, the gods came from the stars. In Norse legends, the Bifrost was a rainbow bridge to another realm described almost like a portal. In Greek stories, Daedalus crafted wings of wax and flew through the sky. Every culture, every time period, holds pieces of strange knowledge. We've always dismissed it as metaphor. But what if mythology is not metaphor, but memory? A memory of a time when the skies were full of machines, when light didn't come from fire, but from something cleaner. When gods were not deities but travelers, engineers, teachers, or survivors of a lost age. There is pain in these stories too. The Mahabharata doesn't just speak of flying machines. It tells of terrible weapons, beams of light that turned everything to ash. People's hair and nails fell out. Water became poisoned. Birds fell from the sky. It sounds frighteningly close to nuclear war, but this text is over 5,000 years old. If that's imagination, it's a terrifyingly accurate one. Is it possible these were echoes of a war that once destroyed an older world? A war whose scars we have buried beneath time? Even in the Bible, there are strange clues. The book of Ezekiel describes a vision, a wheel within a wheel, with fire, light, and metal. Some modern scholars and even NASA engineers have suggested it sounds like a machine, possibly even a spacecraft. Yet it's taught as a dream, a symbol. What if it wasn't? What if our ancestors tried to record what they saw in the only way they could, through poems, visions, and stories? They may not have had the words spaceship or nuclear, but they had eyes. They saw, they remembered, they passed it on. We just stopped listening. Today, we live in a world of screens, satellites, and artificial intelligence. We think we are the most advanced age ever to exist. But what if we're just the latest? What if someone came before us, built wonders, flew machines, mapped the stars, and left only whispers in sacred texts? Maybe their greatest gift wasn't the technology they built, but the stories they left behind. Stories we now call myths. Stories we were told not to believe. Stories we are finally starting to see with new eyes. If even one of these ancient texts tells the truth, just one, then it means our history books are missing entire chapters. We were not the first, and maybe we won't be the last. So the next time you hear an ancient legend, don't just smile and turn the page. Listen. Beneath the poetry, beneath the gods and monsters, there may be truth. Truth buried not in stone or bone, but in words. Words that traveled across time, waiting for us to remember. Try to imagine this. A world that looked nothing like the one you know. No humans, no mammals, not even dinosaurs. Just vast oceans, thick jungles, and creatures we'd hardly recognize. Now imagine in that ancient world, something intelligent walked the earth. It sounds like science fiction, but it's not. It's a real scientific thought experiment, one proposed by two respected scientists, Dr. Gavin Schmidt, a climate scientist from NASA, and Dr. Adam Frank, an astrophysicist. Together, they asked a chilling and brilliant question: if a civilization existed on Earth millions of years ago, before humans, before dinosaurs, would we even know? This question became known as the Silurian hypothesis. It's named after a fictional intelligent reptilian species from the British sci-fi show Doctor Who. But the idea behind it is anything but fantasy. Our planet is 4.5 billion years old. Human civilization, our buildings, our machines, our satellites has only existed for a tiny slice of time, maybe 10,000 years if we stretch it generously. Our recorded history is just about 5,000 years, but the Earth has had hundreds of millions of years before us. What happened in all that lost time? Could there have been another species, millions of years ago, that developed intelligence, built cities, explored their world, and then vanished? What would they have left behind? That's the terrifying brilliance of the Silurian hypothesis. It doesn't claim this civilization did exist, only that it could have, and we might not even notice because Earth is a master of erasing its past. Geological forces like plate tectonics constantly reshape the surface. Volcanoes erupt, continents drift, erosion wears away mountains, forests become deserts, oceans rise and fall. In just a few million years, entire landscapes disappear. Now think of us. If humans vanished today, every building, every city, every satellite, how long would it all last? Skyscrapers would crumble in decades. Roads would crack and vanish beneath plants in less than a century. Plastic might last a few thousand years, but in a million years, almost everything would be gone. Now imagine 60 million years, 100 million years, 500 million years. Would anything remain? Would future intelligent life even know we were here? That's what the Silurian hypothesis explores. Even fossils, as tough as they seem, are incredibly rare. Fossilization needs very specific conditions: mud, pressure, minerals, and time. Only a tiny fraction of life ever becomes a fossil. Most of what has lived on Earth, over 99.9% of all species, has vanished without a trace. So what about technology, buildings, machines? In theory, traces of industrial activity could be found in the geological record. Scientists suggest looking for things like chemical signatures, unusual levels of carbon, heavy metals, or synthetic compounds. For example, our modern civilization is releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere at an alarming rate. That will leave a clear mark in the Earth's sedimentary layers, a sudden spike of CO that could be visible millions of years from now. But here's the twist. Similar carbon spikes have happened before. One of them, the Paleocene thermal maximum Pechem, happened about 56 million years ago. Global temperatures soared. Carbon levels rose dramatically. Oceans became acidic. Many species went extinct. Sound familiar? Some scientists wonder, was this just a natural event? Or could it have been caused by an earlier civilization burning fossil fuels, just like us? It's a dangerous thought, and no one is saying it definitely was. But the fact that it's even possible is haunting. If a civilization had existed during the time of the Silurian period, around 400 million years ago, they might have lived in forests of giant ferns and insects the size of birds. They wouldn't have had metal or plastic like we do, but maybe they found other materials, ones we can't even imagine. They may have mastered energy, explored science, built cities from organic or biodegradable materials, and lived in harmony or destruction just like us. And then, maybe something happened. A climate collapse, a volcanic winter, a comet, a war, or perhaps, like us, they simply couldn't stop themselves from destroying the balance of their world, and just like that, they disappeared. Time swept over them like waves over footprints in the sand. Their buildings collapsed, their machines rusted into dust, their bones dissolved into the earth, and Earth simply kept spinning. We would never know unless we're looking. Unless we're asking bold questions, like the scientists behind the Silurian hypothesis. Questions that scare us. Questions that shake the foundation of everything we believe about being unique, because maybe we're not. Maybe we're not the first to look up at the stars and wonder. Maybe we're not the first to build, to dream, to destroy. There is something deeply human about believing we're special, that we are the peak of evolution, that the universe waited billions of years just for us. But what if we're not the peak? What if we're just a repeat? What if Earth has seen other species rise, wonder, fall, and forget? And maybe, somewhere deep underground, in a layer of rock we haven't reached yet, there's a sign, a fossil of a machine, a crystal disk etched with symbols, a chemical fingerprint that tells a story we've never heard, a story of others, not aliens from the stars, but Earthlings, long before us. The Silurian hypothesis doesn't give us answers. It gives us something far more important, perspective. It reminds us that time is vast, that memory is fragile, that even the mightiest empires can be reduced to silence by stone and wind. And maybe, just maybe, if we listen closely to the Earth's oldest layers, we might hear the faint echo of another age, another world, another species who, like us, once stood at the edge of discovery and either turned back or fell forward. We may never find their ruins, we may never read their books, but their lesson might still reach us. A whisper in stone. Don't forget us. Don't repeat us. When we look around at our world, the buildings, the highways, the airplanes, the massive cities that light up the night sky, it's easy to believe that what we created is permanent, that it will last forever, that one day, distant future beings will walk through the ruins of New York or Tokyo, the same way we walk through ancient temples today. But the truth is much harder to accept. The truth is, almost nothing we've built will survive the test of time. Not because we didn't build well, but because time itself, real time, geological time is more powerful than anything we can imagine. We live in what scientists call human time. That's time measured in years, maybe centuries. 100 years feels like a long time to us. 1,000 years feels ancient. But to the Earth, 1,000 years is less than a blink. The planet we live on is 4.5 billion years old. To even begin to understand that, imagine compressing Earth's history into one single year. Humans wouldn't appear until the last few seconds of December 31st. Everything we've done, our wars, our art, our technology, our rise to global power would fit into the final tick of the clock before midnight. That's how brief we are. That's how fragile our memory is. Now think about how the Earth changes. Mountains rise and fall. Oceans flood and retreat. Continents drift slowly, pulled by invisible forces deep underground. Volcanoes explode and cover entire regions in ash. Earthquakes split the land in moments. This is geological time. Slow, relentless, unstoppable. In just a few thousand years, erosion begins to eat away at buildings. Wind, rain, and plant roots silently tear down concrete. Nature doesn't care who we were. She simply takes her time and takes everything back. After 10,000 years, even our biggest cities could be nothing but bumps in the dirt. After 1,000,000 years, even those bumps might be gone. And after 100 million years, there might not be a single trace left. It's heartbreaking to realize, but it's true. Even if we imagine our civilization as strong and permanent, in the face of geological time, we are like sandcastles by the sea. Beautiful, complex, proud, but the waves are always coming. So what would be left of us? If some future intelligent species walked the Earth, millions of years from now, what would they find? They might not see our skyscrapers. They wouldn't find our roads or our smartphones or our books, but they might find plastic, because plastic is strange. It doesn't decay like wood or stone. It doesn't rust like iron. It just sticks around. It breaks into tiny pieces, microplastics, but it doesn't vanish. Our oceans are already filled with it. Our soil is full of it. Even our rain carries it. A future geologist might dig deep into the Earth and find layers filled with plastic, and wonder, what was this strange material, and who made so much of it? They might also find radiation. From nuclear tests, from power plants, from accidents and war. Radioactive elements don't fade quickly. Some of them will last for tens of thousands of years. Others, for millions. If they look at the rocks and detect unnatural radiation levels, they'll know. Something happened here. Something powerful. Something dangerous. And then, there's chemicals. Synthetic chemicals that don't exist in nature. Man-made compounds and our pesticides, our electronics, our industries, these could sink into the soil, the water, the rock traces that might puzzle future scientists. They may not find our stories, but they may find our poison. It's a strange kind of legacy. We won't leave behind pyramids or cathedrals that stand for eternity. We'll leave behind pollution, waste, clues, but not memories. And that's what makes this so emotional, so haunting. Because we love to believe that what we're doing matters, that the world will remember us, that our greatness will echo across time. But Earth doesn't remember the way we do. It erases, it rewrites, it starts over again and again. And if we are truly the first civilization, then this is our only chance to be remembered. And if we are not the first, then those who came before us may already be forgotten. Can you feel that sadness? That realization that maybe the past is deeper than we thought, and our future more uncertain than we hoped? We live in a brief moment of light, a flicker in the darkness of deep time, and all our achievements, all our stories, all our science and art may be gone before the next species even learns to walk. Unless we learn to respect time, unless we think beyond ourselves, not just centuries ahead, but millions. Unless we leave behind something more than garbage and radiation, something like knowledge, something like warning, something like hope, because geological time is not our enemy, it is our home. It is the river that carries all life forward. And if we want to leave a message in that river, we must carve it deep and carve it true. Maybe not in stone, but in ideas, in how we live, in how we treat the earth. Because in the end, we are not just writing our own story. We are writing a page in the book of the planet. And one day, someone or something may turn that page. Let them read something beautiful. Let them know, we were here, and we tried. Sometimes the truth isn't hidden deep underground. Sometimes, it's right in front of us, but we refuse to see it because it doesn't fit the story we've already chosen to believe. This is the tragic reality of how academic science sometimes works. Not always, but often enough to change the course of history. When a discovery doesn't match what textbooks have already printed. When it threatens the theories that have become careers, reputations, and institutions. It doesn't get welcomed. It gets dismissed, laughed at, buried. Not because it's false, but because it's inconvenient. Throughout time, discoveries have shaken our understanding of the world. People once believed the earth was flat, that the sun revolved around us, that diseases came from bad air. And every time someone dared to question those truths, they were mocked, punished, or ignored. And yet, they were right. So now, ask yourself, what if someone today found real proof of an ancient, advanced civilization long before us? What if it was a piece of technology embedded in stone millions of years old? Or an ancient text with star maps more accurate than ours? Or a fossilized structure that looked like machinery? Would we celebrate it, or would we bury it? Again, you see, there are people who dedicate their entire lives to this question. They are not part of major universities or massive labs. They don't have million-dollar grants. They often work alone, in quiet corners of the world, driven not by fame but by curiosity. They dig, they read, they explore ancient ruins with open hearts and open minds. And what they find is often dismissed before it's even understood. A carved stone with unnatural symmetry, it's just erosion. A map with knowledge lost to time. Coincidence? An artifact embedded deep in rock older than humans. Contamination. Every time the evidence whispers, look again, someone responds, that's impossible. But what if impossible just means uncomfortable? Because the moment we accept that we're not the first, everything changes. Our timeline, our story, our place in the universe. It forces us to ask, what else have we missed? What else have we silenced? Not because it was wrong, but because it was too different. There are scientists who speak up, brave ones, but they face ridicule. They're labeled as pseudoscientists. Even if their work is careful and evidence-based, they lose funding. They lose their platforms. Some even lose their careers. And so, many stay silent. This is not how science is supposed to work. Science should be curious, not afraid. Science should follow evidence wherever it leads, not just where it's comfortable to go. But sometimes, we're not looking for truth. We're looking for confirmation of what we already believe. And that's dangerous. Because it means we might be walking past the greatest discoveries of all time, ignoring them, laughing at them, or worse, destroying them. Imagine a small ancient device found in a cave. It has gears, and it seems to track the stars. It predates Greek astronomy. It shouldn't exist, but it does. It's called the Antikythera mechanism. And for years, people thought it was a hoax or misunderstood. Until it wasn't. Until scientists finally admitted it was real. And far more advanced than it had any right to be for its time. That's just one example, one that survived. But how many didn't? How many discoveries were thrown away, mislabeled, or quietly tucked into museum basements? How many researchers were told, don't go there, it's not worth it? And how many of us believed them? There's something heartbreaking about the idea that the truth could be calling us, and we're too proud or too scared to listen. But that's what happens when the walls of tradition are too thick, when stepping outside of accepted history is seen as rebellion, not inquiry. And yet, history has always been rewritten by rebels. People like Galileo, who looked through a telescope and saw a different sky, or Darwin, who realized we were not fixed, but evolving, or Schliemann, who believed the stories of Homer were not just myths and found Troy. These were once fringe thinkers too. So when we hear about ancient civilizations under the ocean, or pyramids older than we thought possible, or metals that don't match known ancient technology, maybe, just maybe, we shouldn't laugh. Maybe we should listen, because truth doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it whispers, and those whispers are often caught not by the loudest voices, but by the quiet ones, the patient ones, the ones willing to ask, what if? Yes, we must protect science from false claims, from fantasy, from lies, but we must also protect it from fear. Fear of being wrong, fear of looking foolish, fear of starting over. Because if we ignore the evidence that doesn't fit, we're not doing science, we're doing dogma. We're reclinging to a version of the past, not because it is right, but because it is safe. And yet the real past, it's not safe. It's full of mystery, and darkness, and wonder. It might contain stories of civilizations that rose and fell before us. Stories carved in stone, buried in ice, waiting to be heard. And the only thing standing between those stories and our understanding is our willingness to listen. So let us not be too proud to admit we may have missed something. Let us not be so certain that we turn our backs on the unknown. Let us not silence the explorers, the thinkers, the questioners, just because their answers make us uncomfortable. Because what they seek is not fantasy, it's not conspiracy, it's truth. And maybe, just maybe, the truth is far older and far more incredible than we ever dared to believe. There's something strange that echoes across almost every ancient culture on Earth, something that defies distance, time, and even language. The stories in Egypt, the gods came down from the sky. In Sumer, the Anunnaki descended from the heavens. In India, flying machines called vimanas roared across the skies. In the Americas, the gods rode fiery serpents. In Africa, the Dogon tribe knew the details of stars too far to see without telescopes. Again and again, our ancestors told the same story. Beings came down from the stars. They were powerful. They were not like us, and they gave us knowledge. At first, these stories sound like myths, like fairy tales passed from mouth to mouth over thousands of years. But what if they're not just imagination? What if they're memory? What if the beings they described were real and what if they weren't from here? This is the question that fuels one of the most controversial and fascinating ideas of our time, the ancient astronaut theory. It suggests that a previous civilization on Earth may not have been human at all, or at least, not entirely. What if the first great civilization on Earth didn't evolve slowly from apes to man? What if it came from the stars? When you begin to look closely, the clues are everywhere. Carvings of creatures with wings and helmets, figures in suits that look like modern astronauts, stories of people taught by gods how to farm, how to build, how to write. But why would so many ancient cultures invent the same idea? Why would so many speak of beings that looked different, came from the sky, and then left? And most importantly, where did they go? There are those who believe they never left, that they simply vanished underground, or returned to the stars, or even blended with us, changing who we are. What if the missing link in human evolution isn't missing at all? What if it was a fusion between something human and something not? Scientists admit there are strange jumps in our evolutionary path. Our brains, our language, our sudden ability to build complex societies. It all came fast. Too fast. Something accelerated us. Could that something have been a someone? We're taught to think of ourselves as the beginning of intelligent life on Earth. But what if we're the continuation, the descendants of something far older, far wiser, and possibly far more powerful? Some ancient texts even say it plainly. The Sumerians wrote that the Anunnaki created humans as workers, that they mixed their essence with something already on Earth. In other words, they made us. Other cultures talk about star brothers, or gods with glowing skin, or teachers who could move objects with thought. Are these just symbols? Or are they faded memories of a time when Earth was visited or even ruled by something from elsewhere? Many people are afraid to ask this question because it challenges everything we've been taught. It shakes the foundation of religion, science, and identity. But maybe the truth is meant to shake us, because the evidence doesn't just live in old books and stories. It lives in the ruins. Massive stones cut with laser-like precision, temples aligned perfectly with stars, pyramids that echo the shape of Orion's belt. How could early humans, with no machines, no electricity, no wheels, do this? Even today, with all our technology, we can't replicate some of these structures. So what if they didn't do it alone? What if we're walking among the fingerprints of another species, one that lived here before us, or arrived here long ago? The idea is terrifying, but it's also deeply moving, because it means we're not alone, and we never were. It means the universe might be filled with life. It means Earth may have once been a stop on a long journey, an outpost, a colony, or even a sanctuary. Some people laugh at this idea. They call it fantasy, science fiction, delusion. But what's more unlikely that life traveled between the stars and reached us, or that across thousands of miles, separated by oceans and centuries, every ancient culture accidentally imagined the same thing? Because that's what we see. We see statues with helmets, we see beings with wings and machines of fire. We see ancient cities built in patterns that match constellations. Coincidence? Or memory? And if it's memory, what happened to them? Did they leave? Did they die? Did they watch us grow? Or did they become us? Some researchers believe the human mind still holds echoes of these ancient visitors. In our dreams, in our myths, in our desire to look up at the stars and feel like we're going home. Is that longing just imagination, or is it ancestral? Even in modern times, people claim to see crafts in the sky, lights that move in ways physics cannot explain, objects without engines, without wings, moving faster than anything we've built. Are they waiting, or are they just reminders that we are not the peak of evolution, but part of something far older, and far more connected? If the ancient astronaut theory is even partly true, it changes everything. It means our history is not just human, it's cosmic. It means our past may have begun not in caves but in the stars. And it means the mystery of our existence isn't just about where we came from, but about who was here before us and what they left behind. So when you stand before a temple too massive to build, when you read a story too strange to believe, when you look at the stars and feel like they're calling you, maybe they are. Maybe they've been calling us for thousands of years. Not with words, but with memories, with symbols, with clues we're only just starting to understand. The truth may be hidden, but it is not gone. It lives in the ruins, in the stories, and maybe in our very blood. So ask yourself not if it's possible, but if we're ready to remember, ready to rediscover, ready to accept that we may not be the first or the last. What if the most powerful thing left behind by ancient civilizations wasn't a machine, a monument, or a weapon? What if it was wisdom, a way of seeing the world, a way of understanding energy, life, and the universe, that we have almost completely forgotten? Look at the pyramids. Their size is stunning. Their structure is exact, but beyond the stone, there's something deeper. They align perfectly with the stars above, with Orion, with Sirius, with celestial patterns we barely understand even now. Why? Why would ancient builders care so deeply about the stars? Why would they build in harmony with the sky? Unless they believed the earth and the heavens were connected. Unless they believed we are connected to something far bigger than ourselves. This is the spiritual question. Did these ancient civilizations possess knowledge not just of the physical world, but of the invisible one? Today, we chase progress, speed, technology, we look outward. But ancient people, maybe those before us, they looked inward. They studied energy lines running through the earth, what some call ley lines. They mapped out sacred geometry, shapes and ratios that repeat throughout nature. They knew about the human energy system, chakras, the third eye, the pineal gland. How? How did they know so much? Without the internet? Without satellites? Without microscopes? It wasn't luck. It wasn't guesses. It was a kind of science we don't teach anymore. A spiritual science. One that saw no separation between soul and universe, between body and stars. Take sacred geometry, the spiral of a seashell, the swirl of galaxies, the pattern of a sunflower, even the shape of your DNA, all follow the same ratio. The golden ratio. Ancient civilizations built using it. Temples, pyramids, mosques, and churches across continents, all using the same pattern. They weren't copying each other. They were tapping into something universal. It's as if they knew that geometry wasn't just math, it was a language, a code of creation, a fingerprint of the divine. And what about chakras? Modern science dismissed it for decades, the idea that we have spinning wheels of energy inside our bodies. But now, even medical researchers study energy centers, brain waves, heart coherence. Ancient texts spoke of the third eye, a spiritual eye in the middle of the forehead today. We know the pineal gland sits there, a tiny part of the brain that responds to light and produces melatonin. Coincidence? Or memory? The Egyptians honored it. So did the Hindus, the Buddhists, the Mayans, all different cultures, all distant in time. Yet all focused on the same idea, that within us is a gateway, to higher knowledge, to spiritual vision, to something beyond the physical. Did they know how to open it? Were these ancient beings not just technologically advanced, but spiritually awake? It's hard to believe sometimes. We think of the past as dark, slow, superstitious. But what if it wasn't? What if it was full of light, stillness, and inner wisdom? What if they weren't primitive, but peaceful? Not because they lacked weapons, but because they didn't need them. Because they understood something we've forgotten. That the most important technology is the one inside us. It's easy to build cities, but it's hard to build peace. It's easy to send rockets into space, but it's hard to sit still and hear your own soul. Maybe the ancient ones could do both. Maybe they could cross the oceans and cross into other dimensions. Maybe they could lift stones with vibration, as legends say. Not because of machines, but because of mastery. of energy, of sound, of thought itself. They believed the universe responds to frequency, that every sound, every word, every thought, shapes reality. Even today, we know that sound can heal, that music can move emotions, that certain frequencies can calm the brain or ignite focus. They knew this thousands of years ago. They chanted mantras. They used sound to purify spaces. They sang to the stars, not because it was ritual, but because it worked. Because sound is not just a vibration, it's a bridge between the seen and the unseen, between human and divine. And what about the stars? Why did every ancient culture study them so closely? Because they believed our souls come from the stars, that we are not just bodies, we are light, and one day, we will return to that light. That's why their temples face the heavens. That's why their stories speak of rebirth, of cycles, of eternal life. They didn't just fear death, they understood it, as a passage, a transition, a return. They left behind clues, in stone, in symbols, in stories. And maybe, they left behind hope, that we too, can wake up, that we too can remember who we are, not just skin and bone, but soul and light. So maybe the real treasure of the ancients wasn't gold. It wasn't machines, it wasn't spaceships, it was a way of living, a way of seeing, one that honored the earth and the sky, one that healed the body and the spirit, one that believed everything is connected. Today, we search the stars for signs of life. We build faster machines, bigger cities. But maybe, the greatest leap we can take is not upward, but inward, to silence, to stillness, to soul. The ancients knew this, and maybe they're still waiting. Not in the stars, but in the silence between heartbeats, in the patterns of the earth, in the whisper of the wind, in the feeling that we've been here before. Maybe they never left. Maybe they became the earth itself, or maybe they are part of us. And maybe it's time we remember, not with fear, not with pride, but with humility, that we are not the most advanced, just the most recent, and that the greatest power is not outside us, it is within. We look at the ruins of the past, broken temples, sunken cities, strange artifacts buried deep in the earth, and we ask ourselves, what happened to them? But maybe the real question is, what's about to happen to us? It's easy to think we're untouchable, that with all our technology, our knowledge, our power, nothing can bring us down. But history tells a different story. Every great civilization believed it would last forever. The Egyptians, the Romans, the Sumerians, the Indus Valley, the Mayans, they built wonders. They wrote texts, they ruled empires. And now most of them are just dust, ruins that tourists visit, symbols on museum walls, whispers in the dirt. And today, we stand at the peak of what we call progress. Skyscrapers pierce the sky, satellites orbit the earth, artificial intelligence thinks for us, robots build our homes, phones connect us across continents in seconds. We live longer, travel faster, produce more, but are we safer? Really? Look around. Our climate is breaking, the oceans are choking on plastic, forests are disappearing, species are vanishing, glaciers are melting, storms are stronger, heat waves deadlier, and yet, we keep pushing forward, like a train with no brakes, faster, bigger, louder. But where are we heading? Because the Earth, this quiet, beautiful planet, is not invincible, and neither are we. We create nuclear weapons powerful enough to erase cities in seconds. We build machines that can outthink humans. We tamper with genetics, with ecosystems, with forces we barely understand, and still, we believe we're in control. Just like they did. Just like the ones who came before us, and vanished. They may have had their own wonders, their own inventions, their own versions of technology, and knowledge, and pride. But something happened. Something always happens. Floods, fire, famine, disease, or worse, collapse from within. A civilization doesn't always fall with a bang. Sometimes it crumbles slowly. From greed, from corruption, from forgetting what matters most. And maybe we're forgetting too. We measure success in dollars, likes, power, but not in balance, not in peace, not in kindness, or care. And when the earth begins to whisper warnings, we cover our ears. We deny the science, mock the experts, ignore the signs. But the signs are there. Wildfires devour entire countries. Oceans rise where cities once stood. Animals flee their habitats. Crops fail. Water runs dry. We keep building, while the ground beneath us cracks. We keep drilling, while the air above us chokes. We keep pretending, while the clock keeps ticking. And somewhere deep inside, we all feel it. That something is off, that something is coming. Not tomorrow, not 1,000 years from now, but maybe soon, maybe now. We call ourselves advanced, but we can't feed everyone. We can't stop wars. We can't stop hurting the only home we have. If we were the most advanced, would we live like this? We chase artificial intelligence, but lose our own humanity. We explore space, while destroying Earth. We study life, but forget how to live it. And the saddest part? If we fall, we might not leave much behind. Stone temples last thousands of years, but our cities, steel rusts, glass shatters. Plastic takes centuries to break down, but even it will fade. Digital records will vanish. Our memories will be erased, just like those before us. And maybe one day, far in the future, someone else will dig into the soil and find a piece of metal, a plastic shard, a strange object that doesn't belong. And they'll ask, what was this? Who were they? And maybe, just maybe, they'll ask the same thing we re-asking now. Were we the first? And did we make the same mistake? We live as if we're outside of history, as if we're the end of the line. But Earth has seen giants rise and fall. It has seen forests where deserts now stand, oceans where mountains now rise. Life flourish, then vanish. Time erases everything, unless we choose to learn, unless we stop, listen, and change. Because the warning isn't just in ancient myths, it's in the mirror. The collapse isn't just a story from the past. It's a path we're walking now, and the choice is still ours. To build, or to break, to remember, or forget. To wake up, or to sleepwalk into the end. We don't have to fall, we don't have to repeat history, but we do have to see that Earth isn't just a place to use. It is a life to protect. See that technology without wisdom is a sword without a handle. See that speed without direction leads only to disaster. Are we next? Only if we choose to be. Only if we ignore the signs. Only if we forget the past. Only if we pretend we're above the laws of nature. But if we remember, if we open our eyes, if we truly listen, then maybe, just maybe, we become more than a forgotten chapter. We become the turning point. The generation that broke the cycle, that healed the planet, that saved itself, not through power, not through pride, but through humility, through care, through courage. The kind of courage it takes to say, we were wrong. We can do better, and we will, because history isn't finished. The story isn't over, and if we choose it, the next chapter could be the most beautiful one yet. For most of our lives, we're taught a straight story, that we began in caves, that we evolved slowly, that we discovered fire, invented the wheel, built cities, and reached the stars, that we are the peak, the highest point of human history. But what if we're not? What if we're not the first? What if this story, our story, is just one chapter in a much bigger, older book, a book with missing pages, torn corners, faded ink, and secrets buried so deep, we stopped even asking the questions. Earth is old, not hundreds of years old, not thousands, but over 4.5 billion years old, and we've only been here, as humans, for a tiny, tiny sliver of that time. If Earth was a 24-hour day, we arrived just before midnight, not even a blink, not even a breath, and yet we act as if we're the first to walk these lands, the first to build, to think, to dream, to love. But the rocks tell another story. They've seen fire and ice. They've seen continents collide and tear apart. They've seen forests turn into oceans, and oceans into deserts. They've seen giants roam and disappear. They've felt the weight of forgotten cities, now buried under dust and time. And if we listen closely, maybe they're trying to tell us something. Maybe the Earth remembers. Maybe before us, there were others. Other beings, other minds, other hearts, who rose, who fell, who left behind pieces too strange for our textbooks, who left behind questions we still don't know how to ask, who maybe, like us, thought they were the first, and maybe, like us, never imagined they'd be forgotten. We call them myths, legends, fairy tales, but what if they're not? What if Atlantis was real? What if the Vimana flew? What if the gods of old weren't gods, but something else, something more advanced, something lost, something waiting to be remembered? All around us, signs whisper from the shadows. Temples older than we thought possible. Maps drawn before they should exist. Tools that don't belong to our timeline. Stars that once guided people we no longer remember. And every time we uncover something strange, we bury it again. With explanations that feel too small, we say coincidence, we say mistake, we say hoax, because the truth is too big, too wild, too beautiful. The truth that we may not be alone. Not in space, but in time. That Earth may have hosted more than just us. That intelligence may not be rare. That we are part of a much older story, one we barely understand, and that changes everything. It humbles us because if we're not the first, then we're not the masters. We're just inheritors, caretakers of a world that has seen more than we can imagine. And maybe, one day, we'll be gone too. Just like those who came before. But maybe, just maybe, we have a choice. To not vanish. To not be forgotten. To learn from the silence they left behind. To listen to the warnings. To dig deeper, not just into the earth, but into ourselves. Because maybe the most important thing isn't proving whether there were civilizations before us. Maybe the point is what we do now. What legacy we leave behind. Not just in stone or metal, but in how we treat this planet. In how we treat each other. In what kind of ancestors we choose to become. One day, someone may walk this earth long after we're gone. They may find pieces of us. A shard of glass, a plastic bottle, a whisper in the ruins. And they'll wonder, who were they? Did they know what they were doing? Did they care? Maybe we won't be remembered for our machines, or our buildings, or our wars. Maybe if we're lucky, we'll be remembered for something else. That we opened our eyes. That we looked back in time, and learned, that we saw ourselves in those who came before, and made sure we did better, that we didn't waste the gift of being here, in this fragile, powerful, precious moment of time. So no, maybe we're not the first, and no, maybe we won't be the last, but maybe we can be the ones who finally understood, who connected the dots, who remembered the forgotten, who didn't need a fall to wake up. Because maybe the story of Earth isn't just about rise and collapse. Maybe it's about awakening. And now, in this chapter, this time, this breath, it's our turn to write something worth remembering. So now, you've heard the whispers of forgotten worlds, the ruins that speak without words, the stars that remember stories we've buried, the clues hidden in stone, in myth, in silence, and maybe just maybe you feel it too. That haunting question echoing deep inside, what if we're not the first? This journey was not just about history, it was about who we are, who we could be, and what we choose to leave behind. If you felt something, if a part of you woke up tonight, then don't let the story end here, because our chapter isn't finished yet. Subscribe to this channel. Be part of a community that asks the questions others are afraid to ask, that looks deeper, feels stronger, and dares to remember what the world has forgotten. Thank you for walking this path with us. Until next time, keep questioning, keep feeling, and keep searching, because the past is not dead. It's waiting.